He actually looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Dad never loved you. You were just the convenient one." And I swear, I felt my whole world crack open right there in the middle of that courtroom. My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old, born and raised just outside of Columbus, Ohio, in one of those middle-class neighborhoods where everybody knows your business and nobody minds their own. My dad, Robert, was a retired engineer, quiet man, sharp mind, heart of gold. My mom passed when I was 12, so it was just the three of us, me, my dad, and my older brother, Marcus. Marcus? Where do I even start? Growing up, Marcus was the golden boy. Football captain, business degree, the son Dad bragged about at every cookout. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who moved back after college, who drove Dad to chemotherapy appointments, who held his hand when the diagnosis came back worse than expected. I gave up a job offer in Denver to be there for him. Not because I wanted something, because he was my dad. When he passed last spring, I thought the hardest part was over. I had no idea it was just beginning, because 2 weeks after we buried him, Marcus filed a lawsuit to invalidate Dad's will, claiming our father had been mentally incompetent when he signed it, claiming I had manipulated a sick old man. So let me ask you something honestly. Am I in the wrong for fighting back with everything I had? Because what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. The will reading was on a Tuesday morning. I remember it was raining. That gray, heavy Ohio rain that makes everything feel heavier than it already is. I sat in the attorney's office wearing the black dress I'd worn to Dad's funeral just 11 days before, and my hands would not stop shaking. Marcus sat across from me. He had on a suit, a new one I noticed, navy blue, freshly pressed, like he was going to a business meeting, not his father's estate hearing. He didn't look at me once. Attorney Dave Heller cleared his throat and began reading. Dad's estate wasn't massive, the house, a savings account, some investments, but he'd built it carefully over 40 years. According to the will, 70% went to me, 30% to Marcus, and a small portion to a local veterans charity Dad had supported for decades. The room went silent. Marcus's jaw tightened. I saw it, that muscle in his cheek that always pulsed when he was furious. He stood up before Dave even finished the last sentence. "That's not going to hold up," he said, his voice flat and cold. "Dad wasn't in his right mind. Everybody knows that. Claire manipulated him when he was sick and vulnerable, and I'm going to prove it." I couldn't breathe. I literally could not get air into my lungs. This was my brother. This was the man who'd carried me on his shoulders at the state fair when I was 6 years old, and he was standing there in front of our father's attorney, calling me a manipulator. "Marcus," I started. "Don't," he cut me off. "Just don't." He walked out. And 3 days later, I was served with legal papers. The lawsuit claimed that our father, Robert Allen Mercer, had been suffering from moderate to severe cognitive decline in the final 8 months of his life, making him legally incapable of executing a valid will. Marcus had hired a medical expert, some neurologist from out of state, who'd reviewed Dad's medical records and was prepared to testify that Dad had shown signs of dementia. He also claimed I had isolated Dad from the rest of the family, controlled his access to information, and systematically influenced him to change the will in my favor. I want you to understand something. I need you to really hear this. My father was sharp until his final weeks. Yes, he was sick. Yes, the cancer had taken so much from him physically, but the man did the New York Times crossword puzzle in pen 3 days before he was admitted to hospice. He FaceTimed his college roommate in Florida. He told me clearly and deliberately that he wanted me to have the house because I'd been the one to keep it standing. But none of that seemed to matter once Marcus got his legal team involved. The next few months were the most psychologically brutal of my life. I'm not being dramatic. I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. I lost 12 pounds. My hair started falling out from stress. And every time I thought I'd found solid ground, Marcus or his attorneys would file something new. Another motion, another subpoena, another request for documents. It felt like drowning in slow motion, and the things people started saying. Marcus had been busy. He'd called relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, painting this picture of me as some gold-digging daughter who'd swooped in on a dying man. My cousin Diane, someone I used to make Christmas cookies with, sent me a text that said, "I always knew you were selfish. Now the whole family knows it too." That one hurt more than I expected. What really broke something in me, though, was a conversation I had with my Aunt Patricia, Dad's sister. She called me 2 months into the lawsuit, and I genuinely thought, she was calling to check on me. Instead, she told me she'd agreed to be a witness for Marcus. She said she'd seen Dad confused and disoriented on multiple occasions. She said I had kept her from visiting. "Patricia," I said, "I called you 8 times in the last year of Dad's life. You didn't come because you had a cruise booked. I have the texts." She hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for 2 hours straight. Not because I was weak, but because there is a specific kind of grief that comes from realizing the people you thought loved you were just waiting for a reason not to. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Sylvia Park, kept telling me to focus. "Don't let them rattle you, Claire, that's the strategy. They want you emotional, they want you reactive. Don't give them that." Sylvia was right. But knowing something intellectually and actually doing it when your brother is in depositions calling your character into question, that's 2 very different things. The deposition was in October. 6 hours. Marcus's attorney, a slick guy named Bradley Weston, asked me questions designed to make me look calculated. "When did you first discuss the will with your father? Did you suggest he change it? Did you know you were the primary beneficiary before he passed?" Every question was designed to plant a seed of suspicion, and I could see it working on the paralegal in the corner who kept writing things down and glancing at me sideways. But here's where things started to shift. During discovery, my attorney had requested all security footage from Dad's house during the last 12 months of his life. The house had a system installed about 3 years ago. 4 cameras inside and out, motion activated. Marcus's legal team had been fighting the request, claiming it was an overreach, that it was irrelevant. "Why," Sylvia pointed out, "would footage of the inside of a dying man's house be irrelevant in a case about whether someone had influenced him?" The judge agreed. The footage was turned over. I was in Sylvia's office on a Wednesday afternoon when her paralegal came in and set a laptop on the conference table. "You need to see this," he said quietly. He wasn't looking at either of us. He was looking at the floor. That's when I knew. The footage was dated 9 months before Dad passed, a Thursday evening in February. I wasn't there. I remember that night because I'd gone to a friend's bachelorette dinner in Cincinnati. I'd told Dad I'd be back by Sunday. On the screen, I watched a car pull into Dad's driveway. Marcus got out. Then a woman I didn't recognize, late 40s, professional-looking, carrying a leather briefcase. They let themselves in with Marcus's key. Dad was in the living room in his recliner, a blanket over his legs. He looked confused to see them. "What's going on? Claire didn't tell me you were coming," he said. "Dad, we need to talk," Marcus said. "About the will." What followed was 47 minutes of footage. 47 minutes of Marcus and this woman, who turned out to be a paralegal, not an attorney, not a licensed professional in any relevant capacity, sitting across from my father, showing him documents, speaking in low, firm tones. At one point, Dad said clearly, "I already have a will. I don't want to change it." Marcus leaned forward, and he said, and I am not paraphrasing, "I watched this footage 4 times. Dad, Claire is planning to sell the house the minute you're gone. She told me herself. She's already talked to realtors. Don't you want to protect what you built?" My father's face changed. I watched it happen in real time, on a grainy security recording, and I felt sick to my stomach. "She said that?" Dad asked. His voice was so small. "She did. I have texts. I'll show you." He showed Dad his phone. I couldn't see what was on the screen, but I later found out from a digital forensics expert that Marcus had fabricated a text thread, screenshots he'd created using a spoofing app designed to look like messages from my number discussing selling the property. My father signed a document that night, a handwritten addendum to his existing will, drafted by this unlicensed paralegal that would have reduced my share to 15%. Except, and this is the part that still gives me chills, Dad never filed it. Sylvia later determined that he had gone to his original attorney 2 weeks later, alone, and revoked it entirely. He'd told the attorney he felt he'd been pressured into something, but didn't want to cause family conflict by pursuing it. He protected me quietly. Even at the end, he protected me. And Marcus had no idea any of this was on camera. Plot twist 1, the woman with Marcus? She was his business partner's wife, and when her identity was confirmed, it came out that Marcus had paid her $8,000 in cash, withdrawn from a joint account he shared with his wife, without her knowledge. His own wife didn't know what he'd been doing. Plot twist number 2, the neurologist Marcus had hired to testify that Dad had dementia. When Sylvia's team deposed him, he admitted under oath that his assessment had been based entirely on records selected and provided to him by Marcus's legal team. He had never actually met my father. He had never spoken to any of Dad's actual treating physicians. He had been given a curated package of information designed to support a predetermined conclusion. And the kicker? There was an email chain between Marcus and Bradley Weston, the slick attorney, where Marcus explicitly wrote, "We need the cognitive decline angle to stick. Pull whatever you can from the hospice records and leave out the rest. Leave out the rest. Leave out the crossword puzzles. Leave out the FaceTime calls. Leave out the moment Dad looked me in the eye and said, 'This house is yours, baby girl, because you showed up.'" When Sylvia walked into that courtroom and submitted the security footage into evidence, the atmosphere in that room changed. I can only describe it as the air going completely still. Bradley Weston went pale. Marcus, my brother, the man in the navy suit who'd called me a manipulator, looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. Because they had. The judge stopped proceedings. There was a recess. When we came back, Bradley Weston requested a private conference. 2 days later, Marcus dropped the lawsuit. But it didn't end there, because Sylvia wasn't finished. Here's what people don't tell you about winning. It doesn't feel the way you think it will. I thought I'd feel relief, maybe even some satisfaction. Instead, when Marcus dropped that lawsuit, I sat in my car in the parking garage outside the courthouse and just cried. Not tears of joy, something messier than that. Grief, I think, for the brother I thought I had, for the family I believed in. But I'll tell you what I did next, and this is the part where I stopped being the victim. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and I called Sylvia. "What are our options?" I asked her. Turns out we had several. The fabricated text messages, a federal crime. The unlicensed paralegal drafting legal documents, a civil and criminal matter. The coordinated effort to submit a fraudulent medical opinion to a court, grounds for sanctions and potential disbarment for Bradley Weston. And the cash payments? That opened a whole separate thread involving tax issues his accountant probably wasn't thrilled about either. I filed complaints, every single one. I also sent a certified letter to every family member who had testified against me, called me selfish, or spread Marcus's version of events. The letter contained one thing: a USB drive with 30 seconds of that security footage. No explanation, no commentary, just the truth, delivered quietly, the same way my father had always handled things. I didn't need them to apologize. I needed them to know. My Aunt Patricia called. she cried. I listened, said I know, and hung up. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. Some bridges needed to fall. And the house? I'm sitting in it right now. Dad's recliner is still in the corner of the living room. I can't bring myself to move it yet. So let me ask you, am I in the wrong? For fighting? For filing those complaints? For sending that USB drive and not offering forgiveness on demand? Because here's what I learned through all of this. Staying quiet to keep the peace is sometimes just letting someone else write your story. And nobody gets to write mine. If this happened to you, would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments because I genuinely want to hear from you. And if you've ever had someone in your own family betray you over money, over jealousy, over nothing, you already know exactly how this felt. Subscribe if you want to hear what happened to Marcus next, because that